Hello everybody, welcome to the family workshop. We're going to be looking at the Ferens Art Gallery collection today. My name's Dom and I'm going to be showing you a particular piece of work in the Ferens collection by a sculptor called Eduardo Paolozzi. So first, a little bit of background info about Paolozzi. He was born in 1924 in Scotland. He was the son of Italian immigrants and he worked in a number of different cities across his life, but after a brief spell in Paris, got a studio in London. You can still see some of Paolozzi's work in London. There's this particular sculpture in Pimlico, and then there's this wonderful mosaic at Tottenham Court Road Tube Station. Now, a lot of Paolozzi's early work was inspired by pop art, which I'm sure you've heard of, but his later sculptures were kind of bizarre fusions of machines and animals, and in particular the piece of work we're going to look at today is a good example of this. So here it is, it's called Large Frog version 2. This is in the collection at the Ferens Art Gallery, so I do highly recommend that you go and see it. It was made in 1958. Paolozzi's sculpture is actually cast in bronze, and a closer look shows us that he's used a lot of bric-a-brac and found objects that he's attached to his sculpture. You can see here, this panel at the front, which kind of makes up a bit of a weird face, is actually made up of an old piano. We're going to think about this as we make our own sculpture. So before we start, here's a brief list of some of the things you might need. Don't worry too much if you haven't got any cardboard or thick paper. Perhaps you could use an old shoebox or something instead. Okay, let's go. So I'm going to talk you through each stage of the process as we make our own version of Paolozzi's frog. Okay, so stage 1, we're going to make the back, the body or the shell of our frog. So I've got a piece of card, just a little bit bigger than A4. Like I said earlier, the top of a shoebox would be useful for this if you've got one lying around. The card is quite thick, but what I'm doing here is just making a rough circle. Doesn't have to be perfectly accurate. Paolozzi's sculptures aren't perfectly symmetrical or geometric. And what I'm doing here is just cutting out a rough circular or oval shape. Notice that with the scissors, I'm moving the card and not the scissors. It's often easier when you're cutting out a large object using a thick piece of card or paper. It's easier to move the paper and the card rather than move the scissors around the shape. Okay, so what I'm doing now is roughly dividing up my circle into sections. Again, this doesn't have to be perfectly accurate, but start by halving the circle and then making quarters. So then what I'm doing is cutting down the lines that I've drawn, but it's very important that you don't cut right to the centre. Leave about an inch away from the centre. The reason we've cut these lines into our shape is that we want our body to be curved and not flat. So the lines that we've cut out will enable us to slightly overlap each section of the card and then tape them together so that as we go around the circle, the circle will turn into a subtle dome. Don't overlap them too much, just a little bit, maybe a half a centimetre. So we've now got our main body, which is in a little dome shape. We're going to think about the legs now. It's important that you use a strong piece of card for this particular part. What we're going to do is make a couple of supports for the legs to stick onto. These supports are going to go across the body. When you've got your two supports, fold two tabs at each end. This is going to make it easier for you to stick them to the inside of the body. Remember, you're going to stick these to the inside of the curved part of the body. So now we've got our two support straps going across the body, we're going to make our legs. The legs are made in exactly the same way as the support straps were made. There's just strips of card with two tabs at either end. One tab will be the foot, and the other tab is to attach the leg to the supporting strap. Don't worry if your sculpture is still a little bit wobbly at this stage, although do try and use thick card for the legs if you can. That will make it stronger. But this stage is going to help to make our sculpture a little bit more stable. We're going to get another couple of cardboard strips and we're going to connect the feet. Then, to add further stability, we're going to add another couple of strips across the top of the legs. You should then find that your sculpture is pretty sturdy. But if it's not, you can always add some more tape to the back of the legs attached to the body. This will further strengthen the legs. Okay, so now we're going to add some colour to our sculpture. I'm just using black here because I want the sculpture to look authentic and quite similar to Paolozzi's cast in bronze. But you can use any colour you like. If it's a frog, why not try a nice bright green? So here I'm just using a quick drying acrylic. Try not to use too much water in the paint because you don't want the cardboard to go soggy. Remember to paint the underside as well, and then the legs, and then once you've painted the whole sculpture, set it to one side to dry. So as we said earlier, Paolozzi uses a lot of found objects to create different textures in his sculptures, so we're going to try and recreate this by having a look around the house and finding some interesting things that we can make rubbings from. So here I've just got a coin. Quick tip, I've used a little bit of blue tack to stick it down before I start to do the rubbing. I'm sure you've done rubbings before, it's just when you get a piece of paper, preferably quite a thin piece, you put the object underneath and then you just use a coloured pencil to sketch over the top of it. Don't press too hard because you'll rip the paper, and also this works better with a darker colour. Also, have a look around the house to see if you can use any found objects. Here we've got a selection of lids from, I think, a deodorant canister and certain other things, and I'm using those just to create a little bit of extra texture, just gluing them onto the legs and onto the body. Finally, I'm going to get my sheet of rubbings. Here we've got some old hinges and brackets that I've made rubbings of. I'm going to cut them out and I'm going to stick them onto the body of the sculpture. You can use as many of these rubbings as you like. It might be fun to try and cover the entire body with different rubbings that you've made. And once you've done that, we're all done.